Is it warocracy or autocracy? Or what type of crazy is that? Except crazy.
News making the headlines.
Black Maria is to carry criminals, child looters that are in government today.
Sometimes it gets confrontational.
Slap you in the face.
Excuse me, don't put words into my mouth.
Whatever it is that will bring our military to disrepute, I say to hell
On
with it.
Core Digest,
I want to know why I should be believing them.
every weekday, we bring all of these together and take them to the court of public opinion,
Everybody have the right in Nigeria.
where you are the judge.
Thank you so very much for staying with us. On the course of the program, it's still Core Digest. And like I said, when we took the break, we're looking at an issue very, very significant to us as Nigerians, and especially very important at this time. You know, recently the federal government is one that's been in a gradual release of excess water from the Lagdo Dam in Cameroon, and the heavy rain expected in the coming months will result in massive flooding across the country, and some states were mentioned to be most affected. We have Adamawa, Taraba, Gombe, Bauchi, Benue and Kogi. And on a general scale, the massive rains are also expected to cause flooding in many parts of the country, like places like Sokoto, Rima, Niger, Benue and Anambra. And of course, coastal flooding is expected to also happen in places like Lagos, Rivers, and some flash floods in Lagos, Sokoto, and Ibadan, and all those states to mention a few. And now when the issue of flooding is mentioned, you know, it takes our minds back to what happened in 2012, which was very, very tragic indeed. You know, the federal government said at that time that over 117 billion naira was spent in tackling flood and its effects across the country, while about 360 lives were lost and over 2 million people were displaced as a result of the 2012 flood. And so it beats the imagination to say that as little as one may see it, it's actually a very, very massive problem that has the capacity to destabilize human life, human activity, and anything you could mention. And that's how I want to look at the topic today, because we care about every single Nigerian on Core TV News. And so our topic for today is After the Rains, Nigeria's Environment in Focus. And today I have two beautiful guests. I have Bala Zaka here, who is an affairs analyst and also an environment analyst as well. Good morning.
Thank you.
It's nice having you on the program. And beautiful lady here is Fadirera Williams, an environment expert. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. And now, looking at the statistics I just read now, it's quite alarming that flooding has the capacity to destroy as much as possible. And of course, not just take lives, but displace people, depriving them of their living, making them lose property, millions of naira. And I'll start with you, Bala Zaka. Do you say, with what happened in 2012, can Nigeria really afford to have a repeat of that experience?
Well, definitely, when you talk about Nigeria affording to have a repeat, it's not a good experience. So once an experience comes and it's not a good one, you will naturally want to avoid it. But the question is this: before you had the experience, you ask yourself questions. What are the causes? Why did I experience what I experienced? Right? These are the fundamental questions you ask. And depending on the answers you give yourself, then you then ask yourself again, when I had this experience or this tragedy, were there lessons learned? If there were lessons learned, then you're supposed to learn from the experience and move forward. When you talk about flooding, of course, flooding is a result of what I can say natural causes and human impacted causes. Because generally, when you talk about climate change is more natural than man-made, right? Global warming, you can say, is man-made, because when you talk about climate change, you're talking about the general change in weather across a given time, probably from decades into years or millions of years. But when you talk about global warming, that has to do with human activities. So the control measures are likely to be different. In the case of climate change, how do you approach it? Because you are now faced with nature, right? In the case of global warming, you know, which is basically man-made or something that was induced by the activities of man, how do you check or control or limit that? So when you look at these broad perspectives and you come up with control measures, then you are likely to mitigate or avoid that tragedy. In our own case now, the flooding that you're talking about.
And now, you know, like you said, that it's a very bad experience that one would not wish for a repeat.
Correct.
But now we're in 2015 and we've gotten warnings about the impending flood and stuff. So would you say the government has learned from the past enough to put things in the right order in 2015, 2 years, or 3 years ago?
For the government of Nigeria, the learning depends. I mean, it's a function of those who were saddled with their responsibilities. I mean, with the responsibility. But there is one basic thing about life. There is the concept of lessons learned. Whether it was a good experience or a bad experience, you're supposed to learn your lessons. If it was a good experience, you're supposed to have learned and improved on the good experiences. If it was a bad experience, then you're supposed to have learned also and avoid the likely negative lacunas. Flooding is not a good thing at all because it leads to losses in different ramifications. You have losses of lives, you know, you have losses of farmlands, you have losses of national assets, right? And apart from that also, it comes with likely endemics, you know. You could have all kinds of sicknesses, right? Malaria, this, that, you know, water being infected and the rest. But outside that again, you have psychological depression. Because when you have bad experiences, it has its own negative psychological effects. So the totality of that will make you to come up with mitigating and control measures. So in the case of Nigeria, the expectation is that those saddled with the responsibilities, you know, were supposed to have learned and advised the Nigerian populace or the Nigerian government on the way forward. Then for the ordinary Nigerian or the citizen, I mean, it's very clear probably I had a bad experience, we lost farmlands. What are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to relocate? Does it mean we were blocking drains? You know, or does it mean, I mean, we were contributing in inducting or creating or invoking this through probably, like in this case now, global warming? So everybody has his own infinitesimal contribution that he or she needs to do. And the totality of that contribution is what will make you to move away from that likely tragedy.
All right, now let me take Fadira, who is an environmental expert. You know, it's very clear that the effect of flooding is quite devastating. And, you know, recently in Jigawa State, one of the local government chairmen said they lost about 200 rice farms as a result of flood because of the water that came from the dam. And so for you, aside from the natural causes, like Bala said, global warming, one couldn't prevent it. Are there any prevention? Climate change. Are there any preventive mechanism that one could put in place so that we don't experience this issue at all?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, if you look at flooding as a problem, it's a global problem. 520 million people are displaced all over the world due to flooding every year, and about 250,000 lives are lost every year from flooding. And you know, when you talk about per capita income, I think about $250 billion is spent all over the world on flooding. And this is why, you know, countries, you know, come up with innovations, you know, they come up with response mechanisms, they come up with proper forecast mechanisms to, you know, bring about this, you know, for awareness or like a preparedness for floods when they come. Now, if you look at the index according to the World Economic Forum, the countries that are on this list, of innovation, Africa is not found there. We have, starting from Finland, ending with China, Taiwan, the 10 top countries on innovation. Africa is not found there. And when you look at amount of money spent on research and development, there's only one African country found there, South Africa. Where am I going with all this information? The issue is, when we talk about preventive measures, it's not just about an abstracted phenomenon. It's not something you do in your mind. It takes research. It takes development of capacity. It takes capacity building. It takes, influxing finances into the educational sector, into the institutions that are responsible for getting information. It takes reproducing meteorological, agencies in different parts, because actually the annual outlook of flooding, which was presented by the Nigerian Hydrological Agency, which is what you were reading out earlier, is actually a product of the SRP, which are sequential rainfall predictions. And these rainfall predictions are usually gathered from NIMET and different, climatological agencies that give us predictions about climate. Now, there's something I need to say here. Climate is different from weather. Weather is any condition of the atmospheric condition of a place at a given time. Climate is something that happens over a long period of time. It's something you cannot predict. It has to be over 30 years, at least, according to the statistical standards by the world organizations involved in that. Because climate takes a long time, you can predict. You cannot predict weather beyond 2 or 3 days. It's just like, I can use the analogy of the age of a person. You can't predict the day a person is going to die. Any given person is going to die. But you can say that life expectancy in men, according to WHO and the World Health Organization, is 53.66 years, and you can say it is 55 years in women. You can say that because that is on a general scale, on an average scale. So when we talk about climate, we're talking about a system of different, atmospheric conditions and situations. We're looking at the hydrology. We're looking at, hydrology, talking about the ocean. We're looking at the cryosphere, talking about the glaciers. We're looking at the atmosphere, talking about the gaseous content. We're putting everything together, the biosphere, talking about the ecosystem and the environment in which we humans and we living organisms live. We put all this together and then we come up with an outlook. And what we need to do is we need to improve on those systems for predicting.
Now, you quite dished out a lot of information here, and it's clear that you really know what you're saying. Now, the question is, what is really impeding the Nigerian system from having enough and quality research to actually be in the right position to predict rightly, even if you can't be 100% sure?
We need political will. At this point, we would like to say that the government has to be involved. The head of the fish is where the rot starts from. You have to be involved. Like he rightly said, when there are environmental disasters all over the world, the economy is paralyzed. Students can't go to school. Workers can't go to work. It's not something, the world has come to a stage where we either adapt or we perish, according to Professor Ibe. We either adapt or we perish. We have to be ready. The government has had political will to implement. And apart from implementation of these forecast mechanisms, we also have to be ready to adapt. Adaptation means we know that the problem is already there. We are aware they're there, and we are ready to fit in. Part of adaptation methods is migration. We must be ready to move people. Because if the Lagdo dams are opened, what we saw in 2012 will happen, and even in a worse way, according to the predictions. Why? Because the climate variability is getting worse and worse. For an average man, what does that mean? It means the rains don't come when they ought to come. It means agriculture is affected. It means when the rains eventually come, they come too much in terms of the quantity of the precipitation. And that means that automatically floods are natural. Flash floods in the low-lying areas like Lagos, the urban locations, Port Harcourt, Delta, you must have floods. The drainage is also another problem. We have to clear the drainage system. We have to open it up. We have to free it. The behavioral and anthropogenic attitudes of people must change. You must stop taking your pure water sachets and dumping it in the drains, or taking your PET bottles and drinking and then dumping, because when you do that, it finds its way to the drains, clogs the drains, and then we have the problem. So what I've said in a nutshell is preventive measures by the government start from forecast mechanisms being improved, so that we are even able to know when it's coming and be prepared to adapt when it's coming.
All right, well, to actually see the seriousness of this flood issue, Emenike Umesi, who is the Deputy Director, Planning and Research or Focused in, told Core TV News in Abuja that Nigerians should be prepared because the times are really, really desperate, and so there's need for preparation. Let's say is warning on the rains.
Like in the north, this is actually when the rains begin, seriously. So we are getting the rains here. And in the south, the rain peaks around August and fizzles out around October, November. So in most parts of the south especially, and the southwest, this is when you get the soil highly inundated, and then the flood begin to appear. So it's not abnormal between September and October to get some of those areas flooded. All what we are doing now is to use our operational offices and zonal offices to embark on awareness campaigns, waste disposal, pre-flooding campaigns, so that people will take care of some of the drains that are blocked, and then so that some of the state governments can be conscientized to the level that they may need to put more effort in clearing out wastes and drains. So that is what we are doing now. We also anticipate that there may be a lot of people calling for evacuation and things like that. But we don't think that as at now it has gotten to that red alert level where we will need to start calling for evacuations. All we are calling is for people to be conscious of the need for them to be aware of what is going on in their environment, so that even if it gets to that point, they would have been aware of it by now. All we are doing is giving early warning signals.
Well, he clearly said that the situation is not so serious, saying that people should stop calling for evacuation at this time. Do you agree with what he just said?
I don't agree with him. And why I do not agree with him is that although you do not have to evacuate people, when you talk about evacuation, there has to be plans already on ground for where these people are going to be taken to in event of the floods. That is what they're talking about. It's not saying evacuate now. It's saying let there be a plan for the evacuation. Let there be a place. For example, when the floods happened, in 2012, people were put in sports complex. Families were put in sports complex. It doesn't make any sense. If we've been aware that this is going to happen, 2012 came on us like a thief in the night. But this time round, Cameroon is informing us ahead of time that they are going to do this. We should plan. We should plan. That's the essence of having, authorities in place to do this, to put the political will to help the people. As many lives as we can save, we must have, ready transportation mechanisms on standby. Because when the floods come, automatically people will have to be ferried. They cannot ride or walk. So we must have all those things on standby. So when they say evacuation, we're not saying right away, right now, let people move away from their homes. No, but rather we're saying let there be a plan.
All right. Now to you, Balazaka, the government actually bears most of the brunt when flood comes and a lot of people are displaced, because they have to be the major spender. And like in 2012, it was recorded that they spent not less than 17 billion naira. And so the question is that why would any government not have the political will to ensure that it puts the right thing in place to prepare against such occurrences or experience?
To a reasonable extent, it depends on the interests or priorities of the government, right? But like everybody knows, when you talk about planning, you're basically talking about thinking ahead. There are certain things you can just do. You see, in some parts of the world, you know, the essence of R&D or research and development does not mean that thing is likely to happen at that time, right? It's something that probably is being predicted or envisaged to happen in decades to come. You know, like she rightly said, when you talk about climate based on basic geography is a study of the way the weather or the environment behaves or responds after probably 3 decades, 4 decades, 5 decades. You know, that's climate. But when you talk about weather has to do with day-to-day variations in how the environment is, you know, and so the essence of planning basically is to make sure you avoid that danger. There are basic things that are happening in this country sometimes that gets one really surprised. We know about deforestation, for instance, and you know the consequences, right? We know about plugging the drains and the likely consequences. There are certain things that are happening all over Nigeria, and they get you surprised and sometimes flabbergasted, especially when you start coming towards the coastal parts of the country. You see people constructing or building houses below sea levels, and you keep wondering, or at the same level with the sea level.
Isn't the government supposed to regulate those bills?
No, you see, education helps every time. You cannot underestimate the number of times you need to educate the human mind. You see somebody trying to build probably a 4 or a 5-story building. All he needs is to have extra blocks above a given level, and he wouldn't want to spend that before he comes up with his foundation. You see these things all over. I've lived in one part of the country, in the southern part of the country. There was a time some of us actually just noticed, you know, that in our usual layman's way of thinking, we just felt that part of the state was sinking. That was the way we saw it. That was the way we felt about it. And we advise ourselves, because just based on our basic knowledge, that in case you want to build or construct your own house, why not just go 3, 4, or even 5 blocks above the ground? And let me tell you the implication of some of this. And that's why when I hear people going into complex things, when the dangers are already there, it gets me surprised. You go to areas, roads have not been constructed. And everybody knows that by the time before you construct a road, you must have a good drainage system. Then when you have the good drainage system, you will now start constructing the road. When you start, first of all, you will analyze the soil chemistry. When you analyze the soil chemistry, you will now start putting your laterite, putting everything, then you come up with your bitumen. But when you are done with that, the road is above all the drainages around that area. Very simple and elementary knowledge and education that should be passed around people. So you can imagine a situation. I now have a drainage system here. My house is on this level and there is no road. Any day you start constructing road, the road will be above the house, will be above the gutter. And what do you expect to happen? What do you expect to happen if it rains? You see it in places like Lagos. When you go to Victoria Island, you find that there are some areas in Victoria Island that are actually lower than the lagoon. Where do you expect the rains? I mean, or the floods from your compound to drain to? Do you expect to continue to use generators to drain, to get these things out? But sometimes people like me feel we can excuse or forgive those who constructed houses probably 50, 60, 70 years ago. You know, the old houses, you know, maybe pre-independent houses. You can excuse and forgive those ones. But I cannot understand how somebody from the late 80s or early 80s or from the 90s will construct a very strong or a good edifice and will not take these basic differentials and setbacks into consideration. It's really shocking. These things are basic and elementary environmental knowledge that we should have ingrained in us.
Who failed in that responsibility?
The government. as far as I'm concerned, the government. Because when you talk about even allocation of plants and whatever, if you go to the organized countries, before people start habiting or moving to particular areas, the areas are supposed to have been planned and designated. You will be told, roads will be constructed along this line, you need to give setbacks, they will tell you the minimum height you should have, they will have carried out soil chemistry. And if you go against the laws of the land, that structure will be pulled or brought down. The reasons why they do that is because you want to just construct a structure that is not in line with what the laws want, but in 30 years' time, that thing the law is talking about today will eventually rear its head. If you go to other places, that is it. Nobody will stop you from going to a new area, but before you get to a new area, they will tell you the height must be this above the sea level, your drainage, you must give this setback, you must give this width for the drains and things like that. The reason is because in 10-15 years time, the government of the day at that time of the dispensation may want to construct roads. But if you go to many places in Nigeria today, you see the roads, by the time they are constructed, they are above the houses.
Now, Fadira, now, while Bala has clearly stated where the government has faulted in this, what role has the individuals played in making this problem aggravated?
Okay, well, I just want to touch a little bit on what he said. Actually, they are control agencies, but Nigeria is a place that is known for corruption. You know, professionally, I'm actually a landscape architect, and I can empathize a little bit with what he's talking about in terms of planning. Because when we talk about planning, there's usually a plan before a city is set up. But in Nigeria, what we have mostly is sprawl. People just plan, build houses. The areas just become transitionary sprawls. It becomes, for example, if you look at the way this particular part of Lagos moving closer to Ogun State has begun to sprawl, there seems to be no plan. And that's usually the problem. You know, because when the control agencies, the building control agencies that are supposed to pay attention, that they are already corrupt. So somebody comes and gives you a building plan that you're going to approve for a bungalow, but he builds a 3-story building because money has changed hands. And that's why I'm particularly happy that this particular government is harping on corruption. Because the truth is that at the end of the day, like he said, after a long time, lives get endangered. Nobody knows that the houses that collapsed in Lagos Island were actually houses that were built with the foundation for a bungalow. The plan that was approved was for a bungalow, but they built 3 stories on a bungalow foundation. And so after a period of time, the house begins to sink. After a while, when there's seismic movements under the earth, the house collapses. So we need the agencies, the control agencies, to do their work. The problem we have with Nigeria is that anybody working in civil service thinks it's just there for fun. That's the opinion I have. People go there, they collect salaries, they don't do their work. When you go to them to ask for information, they make it look as if they're doing you a favor. Everybody should do their work. If we have the attitude that private sector has to work in public sector, Nigeria will move forward because everybody will do what he or she is supposed to do. Now, to the individual participation, individuals are very important in the scheme of things because all over the world, it's a game of numbers. And on the earth, humans are the most populous on the earth. And whatever we do will impact positively or negatively upon the earth. It's not a function of 100 people or 1 billion people doing it. It's about one person doing it. If one person does it in every home, then there will be a solution. Because an average human being emits about 0.3 tons of carbon, for which we need oxygen to take into, balance that energy output. But what happens is that we don't even care about that fact. When we emit this carbon, the carbon goes into the atmosphere. It does what we call a greenhouse effect that traps the energy that's supposed to go back to outer space. This energy that goes back to outer space is what brings about the balance in the energy level. When that balance is tipped, what we have is that the earth warms beyond what it's supposed to do. When the earth warms, all the climate systems are affected.
Okay, now, while the problem has happened for those that were victims 2012, you know, what is your assessment on how the government has been able to manage those who were affected in 2012?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, and from what I experienced, because I've been in Nigeria, I've not been in exile, you know, it was more like a fire brigade approach. But like what we were saying is, when you experience a tragedy, sometimes a tragedy helps you to reorganize and restructure your life for the future. In the case of Nigeria, what was experienced didn't help in putting real physical R&D and tangible measures in place. Because it's not necessary to mention specific villages or cities or towns in Nigeria, but we knew some states were basically were virtually submerged.
Yes.
We saw what was happening. Let me be specific. The state of the former president. These things were very, very clear. They were glaring. You understand? But between that time and now, what has been done? The answer is zero. And like she was talking about planning, the individuals are necessary. My contribution may just be a quanta, but it's very important. We live in a situation where if somebody comes and constructs his house and does not give a setback, the next person comes and he does it the same way. You don't care. If somebody comes and this is the level of the drain and you know you need to go up, you wouldn't care. Because, like she said, the control agencies are not doing their jobs. There are places before you go. In fact, if you go to some countries, you keep wondering when did they come up with the maps and the plans of those countries? You understand? That's how it's supposed to be. Most of the things we're talking about now, ordinarily pre-independence or just after independence, the place where we are now is supposed to or was supposed to have been planned.
It's actually a wetland.
You understand?
We're
Everybody
on a
knew
wetland.
that. And look at like we're explaining also, who has carried out the soil chemistry analysis of this area? What level of compaction is needed before somebody even starts constructing a house? By the time you come and you refill, or people call it generally sand filling, what period or gestation moment do you need to give it for proper sedimentation? Nobody can give you that answer. I will come, buy my own plot of land. The next day, what I will do is I will get trucks of laterite, not knowing that laterite has its own chemistry. You understand? When you try to do these compactions, forcefully compact it, to what extent is the water percolating or the fluid percolating? People don't care. Some will just come, maybe they got some money, they will just come, rush something before you know, they start pouring concrete to make sure it sediments. It doesn't work that way.
Now, Father, I'd like you to quickly react to this. Why some people are very ignorant of the land they acquire? Maybe they acquire from a third party and they are not very educated on the kind of land they're getting.
No, they see this land, they know it's wet, they see it.
Yeah, but you know, the thing is that some people will tell you that they bought some certain land from the government, and so they're surprised why the government will sell to them a land that later they find out years later that it's a water-flogged area.
Actually,
and so the question is why?
The thing is, in Nigeria, we have this problem we're talking about. We need to actually go back to the master plans. The master plans were done as far back as the time of Awolowo. They were plans that took into perspective the what's it called, the increase in population. It took into perspective the fact that it took into perspective the fact that we're going to, you know, become more in number. We're going to have need for more houses. We're going to have need for more roads. We're going to have need for more of those things. But those plans were not followed. Some of this land that people acquired are actually wetlands. In nature, wetlands are given so that they can act as buffers when there is an increase in the water level. Apart from climate change, apart from anything, naturally, nature has a way of increasing in water level when there is rainfall. The water basins become increased, and when the dry season comes for places like tropical Africa, the water basins get lowered. Now, when the water basins are increasing the rainfall period, the wetlands are the natural buffers that take this excess water. But what we have done is we have built on the wetlands. And when we build on the wetlands, where does the water go? Water will always find its level.
All right, we'll still look at the housing system in Nigeria, really, but we'll discuss all of that just after the short break. So stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Some pundits believe that as long as the political system is driven by selected few, corruption may be difficult to fight.
You should be careful about what you say.
I am not the only politician. Even if I've wronged anyone, it is time to forgive me.
Please for Arena every Sunday at 9:15 p.m. and a repeat broadcast every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m.
Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on Digi360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.
Is it wallcracy or autocracy? Or what type of crazy is that? Except crazy.
News making the headlines.
Black Maria is to carry criminals, child looters that are in government today.
Sometimes it gets confrontational.
Slap you in the face. Excuse me, don't put words into my mouth.
Whatever it is that will bring our military to disrepute, I said to hell
on
with it.
Core Digest.
I want to know why I should be believing them.
Every weekday, we bring all of these together and take them to the court of public opinion.
Everybody has a right in Nigeria.
Where you are the judge.
You can now watch Core TV News live from anywhere in the world on our website www.coretvnews.com. Click on Live TV on our website and watch us live.
And welcome to Core TV Primetime Days.
To follow us on Twitter, click on Twitter icon on our website. On Facebook, click on the Facebook and YouTube to see all our previous news production. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Click Core TV, leave a space, then News. Core TV News, a 24-hour news station.
Thank you so very much for staying with us on the course of the program. It's Core Digest and Core TV News, and so far we've been looking at after the rain, looking at Nigeria's environment in focus. And I have two environment experts. One is an expert and the other is an analyst. We're looking at how we could prepare ahead of the times, especially with the prediction that we're going to experience flood. And of course, this is the monsoon season where we have a whole lot of rains. And so it's important that we plan ahead so we don't fall victim of what happened in 2012, where scores of lives were lost, about 360, and 2.2 million Nigerians displaced, and even some are still not recovered from what happened in 2012. And so to be a part of the show, you could dial the numbers showing on your screen to call in to ask questions or give your contribution, and we'll be glad to take them. Now, as we continue, you know, looking at other countries in the world, we see that they also have, like they say, Nigeria is a waterlogged place, especially in Lagos, where you always have to see these things happen. But other countries don't experience flood issues like we tend to see it here. So how do they do it that Nigeria has not gotten it yet?
It's just being organized and planning. It's just like when you look at Nigeria now, because Nigeria depends on oil revenues, and the prices of oil or crude oil is crashing in the international market. It's only a country like Nigeria where you see people confused and everybody is panicking. If you go to other organized countries that have crude oil endowment like Nigeria, they are not as confused as Nigeria. Why? Because they've been planning in the days of surplus. So it's the same thing with what we are talking about. There are certain things that have been basic. They've been there with us. We've seen them. And like she rightly explained, the control agencies or the necessary agencies that had the responsibility to educate, guide Nigerians and enforce certain laws were not doing their jobs. It's as simple as that. When you talk about these changes, whether global warming or climatic changes, people see them coming. You can predict them. If somebody said there is a biotic process coming up, you should know it existed, right? If there is solar energy radiation coming up, if there is what we call plate tectonics, these are things and concepts that have been analyzed, geological issues that have been analyzed. Even if you don't see them, they will eventually, you will hear about them in other parts of the country. Like when people talk about tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, even if you don't experience them today, there is every likelihood that in 1 million years' time, people will experience them in this part of the world. And when you look at even the oceans or the rivers, especially the oceans, you notice that they are all connected. So what makes you think if there is what we call, the melting of the glacier or that big ice that we talk about, and it continues to make the sea level to rise in one part, one day it will not get to this part of the world. Just look at the basic world map and ask yourselves, is there a place where you will see a demarcation or a boundary between the ocean linking Africa and Asia? No. These are basic and elementary things. And like we keep talking in the case of Nigeria, there are so many things we see. It is only in Nigeria that people will wait, or the government will wait, or control agencies will wait until erosion wipes away the road. You will see erosion wiping away the road, going and taking away the ravaging villages, houses collapsing. That's when people will start coming and calling media people like you to come with cameras, and for political reasons, they will want to show that they want to help. You don't plan countries like that. Many organized countries plan generationally. And when you plan generationally, it simply means this thing may not be happening today, but during my grandchildren's time, there is every likelihood that this is what is going to face them. So what are the control measures or preventive measures effective today? And that's why when you talk about R&D or research and development, in Nigeria, nothing is allocated for that. When you go to organized places, you carry out that research and development, not because of today, but to save the future generations.
And that brings me to my next question, is because why is this environmental issue really relegated to the background? Because usually we hear the budget of how to spend this on this, how to spend this on that, but you hardly hear on what they're doing as to environment planning, housing, and all of those. Let's just pick this call. We'll take you, Fadera. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, I can hear you. Tell us your name and where you're calling from, please.
My name is Joseph. I'm calling from Sapele.
Okay, Joseph from Sapele. So go ahead, please. Oh, we lost Joseph. Joseph, you could call back on the show. And for you that also want to call, the number is right on your screen to give your question or contribution. And please also turn down the volume of your TV set when you're calling. So Fadera, you want to comment on why we have it this way in Nigeria?
Well, actually, it's a huge problem. It's something that we have to all get back to brass tacks. When we talk about environmental budgets, there are things that must, as a matter of must, be included in the budget of the country. It must be given a priority. In fact, an idea is to have a flood insurance policy that the government will float. And this flood insurance is kind of like, given to individuals such that, you pay a premium, the way insurance is done. And then in event of flood, you are...
Let me cut you short. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Tell us your name and where... Hello? Tell us your name and where you're calling from. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello? All right, simply call back. The program is still called Digest. And please turn down the volume of your TV set when you call in. All right, continue.
Yes, so as I was saying, you know, it's something that the government could do. Flood insurance. It's a plan. It's a plan that you must include. The problem is in Africa generally, not just Nigeria, is that there is a high level of poverty. The per capita income is very low, and you know, people live under $1 a day. And because of this, people feel, how does that put food on my table? How does it put food on my table? Why should I care about trees? Is that what I'm going to eat? Why should I care about the drains? Is that what I'm going to eat? But we forget that.
Okay, we have another caller now. Hello, good morning. Hello? Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, tell us your name and where you're calling from. And please turn down the volume of your TV set.
Morning, good morning. How are you doing?
Yeah. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Sapele. My name is Joseph.
Okay, Joseph from Sapele, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, my lady there just say about other countries that are planned. But you know, Nigeria is not what they plan. All those Europe countries, it's the government that built their house for them. It's very hard to see individuals that build their house, or they have other areas they develop for the big men. But in Nigeria here, nobody, the government people don't even mind anybody because they know the poor people, they can die anyhow. It's not their problem. When the flood came, they will just bring one bag of rice, bring the granite oil, then to bring media, we pay media almost 5 million to come and show their media that they bring relief material to people. So if they don't have mind for the poor people, God will never have mind for them. God are wicked to us with all our looting. They are treating us like this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That is my contribution.
Thank you, Joseph, for calling. Yeah. You know, that was Joseph's own experience, and it's very sad indeed.
It is sad, yes. It's what the reality of what every man, an average man, on a day-to-day basis faces in this country. So we need the government to have do you know the interesting thing? All over the world, there is a guilt, so to speak, or let me say, there's a kind of responsibility that is put on the developed world that makes them set aside funds, global economic funds, green funds, global climate funds, several funds called different kinds of names. Why? Because the climate change problem that aggravated flooding and other environmental issues was caused by the West during the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century. And based on this, they had different legal framework, the UNFCCC, the IPCC, they came together to say, look, we are the ones that brought about these problems that is affecting the rest of the world. Like he said, rivers flow into rivers. If there's a problem with the Pacific Ocean, sooner or later, it will affect Nigeria. And, you know, based on this, we now find out that these people set aside funds. What we find is that other developing countries in the Latin America and in those areas, they are prepared with plans. So when the United Nations have
let me cut you short then. Let's pick this caller. Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Aminu from Kano.
Okay, Aminu from Kano, go ahead.
Yes, my contribution is that at local level, we have a lot of problems. People are blocking with refuge. Aminu from Kano. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Aminu. Go ahead.
Yeah, people at local level, they block drainage with refuge. You can see a man from his house bring a refuge from his house, dump it inside gutter. So that is what causes the local floods right away. So if there is water, definitely that layer or woods that you put inside the drainage will block it. So that when rain comes, it doesn't have roots. But water finds roots himself. It are going to have this year. So that when they get the level of water, they can be able to know what water do we have in our dam. How can we call irrigation department, talk to them, how they are going to release people to farmers. At the same time, people forget about farming. When you look at the state you mentioned, Katsina, Sokoto, and so on, they have a lot of dams. We have Papillary Dam in the Sokoto. We have dam in Kano. We have it in so many, but the issue is people doesn't use it for agricultural purpose.
Okay.
So just having them at the end of the day, you should know the level of water you are going to have so that you can dredge it to some other people for farming purpose. But we don't use that. All of us, we just concentrated on only fuel, gas, fuel.
All right.
Agriculture is what is going to sustain the whole Nigeria.
Thank you.
So I advise government to take measures next year.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aminu Kano. Aminu Kano sounded like an expert already, but what he said clearly issues that really happen and individual causing the problems and stuff. You want to say something?
That's right. Apart from the ones in other discussions that have to do with technical dexterities, these are elementary and basic things that needs to happen. And like he was saying, okay, people will be pouring polythene bags, refuse in and blocking the drains. Where are these is it environmental law inspection officers? Where are they? We remembered some time ago when the present governor of Kaduna State, El Rufai, was bulldozing houses in Abuja. Was the principal reason why he was doing that was because some people would just go look at a major drainage system and they would just construct a house and block it. They were doing all these things, and nobody was talking. And like Aminu rightly said, if we were to have organized people working in some of these agencies, the rains are coming, you have dams, then you should start expecting a hype in the levels and think of what to do.
Let me cut you short. Hello, good morning. Yes, tell us your name and where you're calling from. Yes, good morning. We can hear you.
Yeah, Ebere from Ghana.
Okay, Ebere from Ghana. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, Ebere, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to contribute that. So, we to blame the government itself.
Okay.
Government itself. That those we have, because the one that happened in Ghana here, witness that killed the 200 people, the almost 200 people. That's how it happened before they have to come in, start doing all sorts of things. They spoke before point. I think I'll say to you, what was said about the roads? The kind of road they have, after the graduation call, the road was the top, that will be normal. The government, this is going to look at what people are going to suffer in the year. So we will have to blame all these that people are. No one start dying of before they people out of it.
All right. Ebere, thank you very much. We could hardly hear you, but you could call back because the network is really shaky. But of course, you heard what he said, that the government needs to be proactive. You could just continue what you were saying.
It's basically the government. You understand? When people build below sea level, who do you blame? It's those in the works department or probably Ministry of Works and Housing or Environment. When you block drainages, who do you blame? It's the people that are saddled with that responsibility by government. As Aminu was explaining, if you have dams in different places, sometimes people share, even this water, you share them. When some people are having surplus or excess, some don't really have. What are the plans? And like he said, if you come and you have rains, in those days, when we were in our elementary school, geography elementary school days, you go and you see rain gauges. They put them outside there, right? When the rains fall, they teach you how you go, you see the level, you read them. Do you see these things in secondary schools? Even in universities, you don't find them. These little things that we ignore are the things that other organized societies, developed or educated societies accumulate together, package together, plan for their lives today, and plan for the generation yet unborn.
And that is what is called sustainability.
I really want you to talk about, you know, while some people are thinking of living where they are as a result of the water, and, you know, Lagos states and other states are having a house scheme to help people relocate. Now, the question is, how affordable are these houses for the average Nigerian?
The houses are not social. They are not social oriented. They are not targeted at the average man. They are not targeted at somebody who earns a minimum wage. They are houses that are expensive. They are there, but they are hardly inhabited. In fact, I started noticing and wanting to take interest in this British or Western system of shopping complex, where you have people, you know, instead of the normal African stores that we're used to. We're used to African stores where you can see the wares you want to buy. The African, the natural average African, goes to where, when he wants to shop, he has a panoramic view of what he wants to buy. He doesn't go in and out, in and out, in and out. That is our culture. But now we have these shopping complexes built. Nobody takes them. Apart from the affordability, it's not culturally, you know, oriented. We need to start working with a bottom-up approach in government. We need to start including the people in our decision-making, in our policy, because it is the people that these policies are going to serve. If the people are not carried along, then the policies will not work. So that is why someone will put his house on the drains, because when you were making the policy, you didn't call the local stakeholders to say, hey, come, this is why we are saying you shouldn't do this. There is no awareness. There is a national orientation agency, I'm aware, but they are the ones saddled with this responsibility of pumping out the awareness. We all know the service providers for our mobile service providers. We know them by heart. We don't have to mention their names. We know them because they are all in our faces. We tune into the television. They are in our face. They do adverts. We need this kind of awareness for people to know.
Now, as a round-off, what would be your charge for the new administration and, of course, the Nigerians in order to avert and manage this flawed situation?
Well, we just have to talk basically and advise them on environmental security. You know, you have to secure the environment. You have to think ahead. You have to plan. There is a need to invest. We have to invest so that we will be comfortable today. And we have to invest to make sure the generation yet unborn will come and positively improve on the legacies or environmental legacies we are going to bequeath to them.
All right, briefly, Fadera.
I want to just say, and I want to plead with our leaders, I want us to empower the intellectual ability of our young people. Nigeria has 60% youth. That means of 150 million, we have about, do the maths for me, about 100 million as young people. What are they involved in now? Music, social media, dance. We need to go back to the days when intellectual improvement was beautiful. It was lucrative. The government should make this happen for the young people. They should look forward to studying. A lot of people don't want to study today because they know when I finish from school, am I going to get a job? Why don't I just dance and then make the money? We need an enabling environment so that the intellectual improvement can move us forward. We as a country have all that we need. We don't need to look outside. We've got the natural resources. We've got the human resources. All over the world, Nigerians are doing big things. Recently, I heard a Nigerian is vying for a post in Spain. Nigerians are doing big things. Anywhere in Nigerian lands, in any part of the world, they become stars. We need to look inward and make Nigeria a great country.
All right, thank you. We want to end by listening to the advice, one of the directors of the National Emergency Management Agency, person of Emenike Umesi, an advice for Nigerians on the flooding situation.
Like in the north, this is actually when the rains begin, seriously. So we are getting the rains here. And in the south, the rain peaks around August and fizzles out around October, November. So in most parts of the south especially, and the southwest, this is when you get the soil highly inundated and then the flood begin to appear. So it's not abnormal between September and October to get some of those areas flooded. All what we are doing now is to use our operational offices and zonal offices to embark on awareness campaigns, waste disposal, pre-flooding campaigns, so that people will take care of some of the drains that are blocked, and then so that some of the state governments can be conscientized to the level that they may need to put more effort in clearing out wastes and drains. So that is what we are doing now. We also anticipate that.
Well, MNEK also advised Nigerians to take precaution measures by doing the right thing at the right time, and the same thing my guest on the show also spoke about, that of course the activities of humans also have a long way to go on making the environment a whole lot more habitable, since the common man is the one that bears the brunt most when this problem happens. And so I want to call it a day on Core Digest. A very big thank you to Bala Zaka for being on the program today.
Thank you.
And to Fadera Williams, thank you so very much. Well, you know, we couldn't exhaust all of this, so there's a possibility that we'll still come back to this issue, because we are in the period and Nigerians need to be educated on this particular issue. But thank you very much for your time today. All right, thank you so very much for watching too, and I hope you are a lot more enlightened. And while we set the agenda for the current administration, we as Nigerians actually look forward to seeing some changes and some positive reactions to all of the things we discussed today. Thank you. It's Core Digest. My name is Omotayo Alo. Bye for now.
Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on Digi360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.
This is what the people are saying.
You don't run a big economy with generator. They need to do more in terms of energy and power.
Many things to do for this Nigeria about lights, water, and new TT.
For Nigerians that are not gullible, we know that good laws have done nothing good for this country.
Buhari won the election convincingly.
Talk to our husband that you should keep promise about what you said, and because people are watching you, you know, another election is coming.
Because some people will stand for Yoruba land. We'll be strong man. We don't die.
This nation is moving forward. The best is going to take place.
The people giving voice to the voiceless.